what's better, holding Ethereum or holding an Ethereum treasury company like BitMine Immersion? Okay, and I think this is an interesting conversation. I've been having these internal dialogues as I'm here in Tokyo. I'm out at the Imperial Palace, which is absolutely phenomenal. It's so freaking beautiful here. But I'm thinking through this lens as far as what is more effective, to hold Ethereum, to hold the treasury, or to hold the treasury company, or to get something like an ETF, right? So ETF is going to be highly regulated by the SEC. And it's going to be less volatile. So you have to think through those specific lenses. If you look at buying Ethereum, just buying the actual straight up coin off of, let's say, Coinbase or something like that, right? And if we're looking at a treasury company, the treasury company, you would own stock in this treasury company, and in turn, they would hold a large amount of the actual coin, and then basically the value of the company is what's going to have it go up or down. And then if we're looking at specifically having an ETF, that would be holding this in some type of exchange. It's regulated by the SEC. It's going to be a little bit more affordable, and over time it'll go up or down. And the way that I think through this is I sort of look at the risk layers, first of all. But then the second thing that I think through, it's sort of weird. I have two analogies. One, I like to think about Ethereum potentially and Ethereum treasury companies almost the same way I would think about like an oil company, right? So you're looking at based off of reserves and how that oil company, somebody's getting yelled at for running on this part of the Imperial Palace. So you would have the oil reserves, okay, that then your company could be valued off of the value of oil in the future. And a lot of that is how I think about something like BitMine Immersion. Another way that I think about it, which is a little bit weird, is I actually think about it through the lens of dairy. And for some reason, I like to think about, in relation to this whole discussion, is that if you milk a cow and you got the milk, okay, you have money. That's Ethereum, okay? Milk is Ethereum. But if you turn it and you process it and you make kefir or cheese or something like that, you can sell it at a premium, and you can then make more money off of the same amount of milk. And so I look at some of these treasury companies almost the same way if they're run properly. And so if we look at the purpose of this, a lot of dairy farmers milk, and then they'll sell their milk to a big conglomerate. But then there's other dairy farmers that actually sell and they make cheese, and then they actually take the same cow, and now the cow's worth more money. And I know this is a little bit of a funky analysis, but I've been thinking through this lens as I'm out here 2 weeks on this business trip, so I got a lot of time to think, a lot of work time too. But looking at that lens, then I'm going, okay, if this is the way it's laid out, right? And we're looking at, you look at buying Ethereum versus buying something like BitMine Immersion versus buying the ETF. I don't really want to talk about the Ethereum ETF. So let's just compare the two of buying straight up Ethereum versus buying BitMine Immersion. Now, the number one aspect for a treasury company is to increase the number of coins that they have per share. So how much Ethereum they have per share, okay? I think the number two aspect that we have to think of personally as a retail investor is the liquidity of the actual company, how well they sell, how big are they, okay? So those are two interesting factors that we have to bring to light. So if we're looking at using strategy as an example, okay, MicroStrategy, they started $13 was their stock value at the time, okay, when they started, and Bitcoin was around 10K. Now, when they started to actually grow, if we looked at them now, right, it's a little windy over here, so I want to make sure it's not horribly windy. So if we look at them now, they are sitting around $340 a stock, okay, so their price has gone up, what is that, 30 times, okay? If we're looking at Bitcoin is now sitting around 115, it's gone up 10 plus times, okay? So if you put the same amount of money, in this case, you would have done better in strategy. Okay, so now if we look at it and we compare this with BitMine Immersion, okay, and we're comparing this with Ethereum, if we own, let's say, BitMine Immersion, there's a couple other factors that come into play. Is that their goal over the last 3 to 5 months, 3 months, they've been clear, is to increase the amount of Ethereum per share. They started at like $4 per share. Now they're up to like $20 per share, something like this, right? So now, and we have to think through that lens, is if Ethereum goes up, their value goes up, okay? They are continuously purchasing, which is also increasing the number of Ethereum they have per share. Now, if we see they go up by, let's say Ethereum goes up by 5 times, it gets to $20,000. We would very likely see BitMine Immersion, in my calculations, would probably go up, from 40 to like 250, $300 a share is what we would probably see. They would have more, and the reason being is, 1, they own a lot of Ethereum. 2, they're increasing the amount of Ethereum they own per share. Now, the big question, when they drop, okay, what happens? So if we put an original 10K into Ethereum and it 4X's, or let's say it 5X's, so we put 10K in and at 5X's, it gets to 50K. We put that same amount into BitMine, okay, and let's just say it 10X's. But when it 10X's, it has, let's say, $10 or $15 of Ethereum per share. By the time it would be dropping, okay, it might have $50 of Ethereum per share in this situation. So the drop will also be less because now they own more Ethereum per share, so it's less volatile. Finally, the other aspect here is that because of staking fees, okay, they're a company that's going to be getting $300+ million a quarter right now. It's probably going to continue to increase, but because of this, the staking fees, we're going to start to see that this company is actually creating pretty substantial revenue quarterly. And now we can think through this. What's one of the first principles of finances is like, it's a company that has a clean balance sheet. It's a company that doesn't have debt. No. Okay. It's a company that has revenue, right? So now we're seeing this, and then we're looking at liquidity. It's trading a lot, $2.8 billion per week. It's a top 20 traded company on the market, and that means that there's a lot of institutional value coming in, a lot of institutional money coming in. So in the entire discussion around this it makes sense to own a little bit of Ethereum if you're in that financial situation. But it also probably makes a lot of sense to own BitMine Immersion if we know that Wall Street's going to smart contracts, okay? We're in this giant change in the financial system because they're creating stable coins and tokenization and all these things. We know where AI is going with everything. And so we start to understand from that perspective that crypto and the financial world are starting, the traditional financial world, TradFi, are starting to meet. The value of Ethereum then is going to continue to rise, right? And then you go back and you say, okay, if they have more Ethereum per share and that's continuing to grow, and then we have staking fees at play as well, and then we have the liquidity aspect of it as well. It's also the biggest Ethereum treasury on the market as well. We can start to see it makes a little bit more sense that the safer play with the bigger payoff is going to be, in this case, the treasury company versus holding the actual coin. And so it's funny because as I'm thinking through this, I actually put in an order for Ethereum this morning personally. I'm like, maybe I should just sit back, and I have a decent amount of Ethereum and now actually put a bit more into BitMine. But when I purchased BitMine, it was one of those off the cuff aspects. So now this is me. I hope this is helping you guys out there think through this BitMine Immersion versus Ethereum, which one's better, why you should have one versus the other, but it still is going to come back to what's the purpose, right? Increasing coin per share, okay? The liquidity, the size, the staking fees here in this case with Ethereum, those are going to be some big factors. The fact that traditional finance is meeting the crypto world here coming up right now, and I think all of that stuff is setting up nicely so that a treasury play is probably going to be relatively safe for me personally, because this is finance that I'm trying to walk through. And try and share this, comment down below, subscribe. I hope this helps you guys out there. Until next time, live from Tokyo. Peace.